Hello and welcome to the 119th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, the podcast that is the winner of the 2019 Golden Geek nomination for Podcast of the Year. You're listening to the best. With me, as always, are my two co-hosts, Neelan and Kellen. How does it feel to be nominated for the best podcast of the year?
It feels really, really, really good to be nominated for the best podcast of 2019. It's fantastic.
It's just like April, man. You know, we're knee deep in 2020 here, and I'm just like, when was 2019?
Well, whenever it was, we were the best.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
Would it kill you to say our slogan, Mark?
I am never going to say the slogan. That's
Have
my
you
thing.
ever? Have you?
I've
What
not.
do you mean that's your thing?
That's my thing. The people know me as that guy. As the guy who never says it.
Well, the people don't care about you.
Your catchphrase is not saying the slogan.
That's right. I have an anti-catchphrase, which is to not say the catchphrase. A big thank you to all the people who went out there and went to boardgamebarrage.com/vote and voted for us to be finalists for the 2019 Golden Geek Podcast of the Year. You can now follow that exact same link and vote for us to, who knows, maybe win
the whole thing.
Yeah, why not? Could happen.
And this is one of those votes where you get to rank all the people. So that means that you can give kudos to our friends at Sporadically Bored and So Very Wrong About Games, and This Game is Broken.
But maybe not too much. Like, put them at like an 8, 9, 10.
I would say, yeah, exactly. You can give them kudos, but not make sure their portion of kudos is
appropriate to their
yeah.
level of professionalism.
So we find ourselves in the midst of the pandemic and various lockdowns that we all are in. So as we haven't been able to meet up with each other for a while, we've found ourselves sort of itching to play some games that we are not really able to. Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator and the various online implementations do a little bit to scratch that itch, but there are some games that, for whatever reason, we want to play that we haven't been playing. And we're going to be talking about the top games that fall into that classification of games we wish we could play, games that we're itching to play.
It's like when you really miss something, even though you probably shouldn't, you know, like, oh man, I miss going to the laundromat.
Right.
Or, no, that's not a good example. Like, I feel like everyone is in this, like, man, wasn't it great when I used to get to go grocery shopping? Like, who likes grocery shopping? Like, why would that be something to miss, you know?
Right.
I'm a fan of staying inside. Let's do this forever.
Whether we need to or not.
That's right. This is
exactly
indeed Kellen's new normal. But before we get into... What was that reaction?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm trying to be spicy.
Yeah, I know. Keep it spicy.
It's every time someone on Reddit says Team Red Tank, it's just, you know, I get another plate of armor.
Right.
That's right.
So you're especially high today.
Well, we got some nice comments.
You did.
Oh, did we? Oh, I didn't see. Because of the
some
nominations?
No, I don't know. Just a couple of like Reddit comments that were both just kind of weirdly like not really related to the topic, except barely, but two people were like, listen to Board Game Barrage.
And then Team Red Tank.
Yeah.
Neil's forgetting the good
Yeah.
These were like posts?
I think the context was someone that was like relatively new to the hobby and was like, oh,
Okay.
I've just discovered this and this. There's a board game podcast I've been listening called Ludology. And then two people were independently were like, you should listen to Board Game Barrage as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We're right.
You want that technical analysis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is the next logical
brain
step.
power.
I'm pointing right to my head.
The combined brain power on this podcast is astronomical.
That's at least an IQ of
one Jeff Engelstein.
One Jeff Eggleston like that. So, before we get into our list of games that we wish we could be playing, let's talk about the
Distance
games.
makes the heart grow fonder.
Did you just come up with that?
That's
brilliant.
I mean, I do come up with a lot of great slogans.
You do you.
Yeah, that was a classic.
That was a classic.
People say that all over the world now.
Yeah,
That's how
I
you know our listenership.
That's how the WHO opened their last convention.
What I'm saying is that's the name of the top 5 list.
What? Distance makes the heart grow fonder?
That's the name of
Why?
the list.
I think we
I
need
don't
to
understand.
we need to hold off on releasing this episode just so we can trademark that line. Especially during these times of trouble.
You're so mean. Christina says I miss grocery shopping. She's listening. What? She's not.
Are we getting live commentary on the
She's
podcast?
in the other room.
She's
She
listening
can't.
from inside the house.
Don't come out.
But before we talk about the games that we wish we were playing, let's talk about the games we are playing. How about that? Let's change things up. Neelan, what have you been playing?
So I have a couple of quick hits. I played a tabletop simulator game of Eternal Chronicles of the Throne with Brandon, a friend of the podcast. And that was really cool because it was the first time we've both been talking about playing this, and then obviously this all went down. So I think this got us into the itch to play a bit more Eternal. The tabletop simulator implementation is quite good. It's got, the snap points in all the places you want to it, so it's easy to move cards in between all the appropriate locations. That's something I was glad to revisit because even though it's one of my favorite games from last year, I rarely get the opportunity for two-player games, so this feels like a perfect time to revisit with someone that also loves it as much as I do. For those that don't know, this is a deck-building dueling game that I've grown to like. It's probably my favorite in that subgenre of deck building, the sort of one versus one dueler. It sort of imitates the Magic the Gathering style of putting creatures out and just throwing them at your opponent's head.
Except for the Pokemon TCG, which you also love.
Yeah, that's also up there in my favorites. Played a lot of. I actually watched a lot of Pokemon being played when I was in high school, but never partook. I was warned against it by the responsible adults. I think I misspoke a week ago when I said that Eternal Chronicles of the Throne was getting a digital release, because a couple of people pointed out to me that they don't think that that's happening. I don't know if I just imagined that, but anyway, Tabletop Simulator will have to do. Other than that, I've also been playing Exit, the Sunken Treasure. This is one of the Exit games. These are escape room style games of puzzle solving in order to progress through this sort of scenario. It's kind of very loosely themed. I was surprised by this one because it has a very different structure from the others. The way the Exit games usually work is you have a sort of a location that's depicted and a sort of a bunch of maybe one or two different riddles you can solve at the same time. Unless I'm completely misremembering, you're free to look through the book and sort of get a bunch of different options and clues to sort of look at any given time. But the Sunken Treasure box has the book very strictly say, on the first page, don't turn the page until you solve this riddle, and then get to the next page, and don't turn the page until you get to this riddle. And so it actually starts narrate a very specific story, which I thought was interesting, but I didn't think it was better than the feeling that you just had a lot of stuff and you had to figure out how to use it. It just felt more like solve a puzzle, then solve this puzzle, then solve this puzzle. The things I like about the Exit games is they tend to build towards these big set piece puzzles at the end of them, and this one had the least elaborate, the least incredible one of those that I've ever played. The puzzles also seemed substantially easier, which made it sort of ideal just to do this as a quick hit solo game, but made it a little bit underwhelming overall. So I guess if you're itching for a solo experience, then you can still do a lot worse than the Exit games. I don't think this would be one I would specifically recommend if you've been curious about the Exit game genre.
Where should they start, Neelan?
I guess this will depend on how many people you have. I still think the best place to start is the Abandoned Cabin. I think this gives you a super solid flavor for what makes Exit very special in terms of the design of the puzzles. It's just interesting and unusual and unlike anything I know of in this space, at least. That was Exit, the Sunken Treasure.
I played a couple of co-op games over the last couple of days. The first was Roll for Adventure. This is a game I've played a couple times before. It's a sort of dice manipulation game where you've got 4 places to place your dice in an effort to stave off monsters that are coming at you round to round. It's sort of a Yahtzee style thing where one of the places where you're placing dice are asking you to place all the same value of dice. Another one is asking you to place dice in sequential order. So Yahtzee style, but with a twist. I actually like this one. It's really light. It's never going to be a favorite game of mine, but in terms of cooperative games, it's easy to teach. I was playing with a non-gamer and it was easy to teach her how to play it. And also the difficulty level seems pretty much perfect, the default difficulty level. Every time I've played this game, it's gotten right to the end where it could have gone either way, and I enjoy that in a cooperative game where it sort of crescendos nicely.
Was it an adventure?
It was an adventure that we rolled for. So it was actually also appropriately titled. I didn't even think of that. Thanks, Kellen. I did roll for the adventure, and I got
Just
it.
here to keep people honest.
That's right. The other game we played, also appropriate given the time, is Target exclusive.
Our sponsor?
Call back to our old sponsor.
We don't mention them anymore.
Yeah, because they're not paying us anymore. Exactly.
Yeah. If they brought the Buckaroos in, we'd mention them all the time.
Well, now that we're top 10, man,
Yeah.
maybe they'll come crawling back.
Instead of using our catchphrase, I would use whatever Target's catchphrase is.
It's a good place to shop.
They'll
Yeah.
finally know why no one has been coming to their store for the last month.
So the game is Pandemic Rapid Response. This is one of the few pandemic games that isn't by Matt Leacock, but instead by Kane Klenko, Mr. Double K, as I like to call him. He of Fuse fame. Like Klenko's other games, this is a real-time dice rolling game. This game has custom dice with different symbols on each face that represent a different type of supplies that you can get that different cities will need around the world. So, for example, if a city needs medicine, you need to go to the medical room, roll a certain number of medicine dice, activate the room to get the medicine, and then fly over to whatever city needs the medicine, and then drop it off.
That's deeply thematic. Go to the medicine room, roll the medicine dice, and then fly through the world. Or do you fly on a plane?
Yeah, there is a little miniature plane. So you got
perfect.
minis,
Good.
Minis for the mini crowd. And you're doing all this real time. There are player powers as in the other pandemic games. This feels much different than other pandemic games. You're not trying to go through the entire deck. At the beginning of the game, you, depending on the difficulty level, you are going to play to either 5 cities or 7 cities, some set number of cities. So that whole deck construction thing where you're worried about cards coming up over and over again is not in this game at all, whereas it is in most pandemic games. So this is, and obviously one of the biggest differences is the real-time aspect. No other pandemic game, as far as I can recall, has that to it.
How much does it share with Fuse in that regard?
It shares, I would say, in terms of the mechanics, a lot more with Fuse than with Pandemic.
Pick up the dice, roll all the dice.
Right.
That's 80% of the game.
Yeah, it's got the Yahtzee style thing where everybody can roll. You can roll your dice 3 times, trying to get the dice you want. You assign them to the various rooms to get supplies, and then pass to the next player who does the same thing. It's a really fast game. I think most games will be over in under 25 minutes. It's also quite difficult, at least again with non-gamers, even at the default level, which makes it challenging, and that's fun. But if this was a game that you were picking up to sort of fight the pandemic at home, the sort of a thematic game given the circumstances, it might be tough to play with non-gamers just because it is quite frantic. And again, I was playing with a non-gamer and it was really hard to keep from quarterbacking because time is running out so quickly that it's hard to not suggest moves.
You're just shouting, roll better, roll better.
That's right. Exactly.
I have a theory, Mark.
Let's do it.
You know how they say that the brain is the biggest muscle?
Yes.
And that you have a big brain, right?
That's so far you're 2 for 2.
Exhibit A, Exhibit B.
Yeah.
Well, you've just admitted that 2 easy light co-op games have been giving you challenges this week. So I would postulate that your brain is not as strong as it once was before the pandemic.
You say they're light co-op games, but I'd like to see you give them a whirl.
I was raised on Yahtzee, bro.
So yeah, it's a departure from Pandemic. If you're looking for something akin to what you know from Pandemic, this is not it. But, if you're looking for something frantic, something that plays quickly, and something that will be a challenge, I think Pandemic Rapid Response is interesting, if nothing else. It goes by so quickly that you'll be done before you know it. So that is Pandemic Rapid Response by Kane Klenko. Kellen, what have you been playing?
We have been trying to play more board games online, given the fact that we can't play them in person. So we took to Tabletopia to play a game that I was eager to try, which is Stockpile. Stockpile is billed as sort of a family-friendly stock manipulation, stock market game that plays in about an hour. I would say it plays in about an hour if you're playing in real life. But we'll split this discussion up into 2 parts. The part about the game and then the part about Neelan not knowing how to use cards in Tabletopia.
Okay, the cards were disappearing into the table. This is not my fault.
I understand that the cards are disappearing into the table, but let's present the evidence. Exhibit A. Neelan, did anyone else's cards go into the table?
No. No one was trying as hard as I was.
Exhibit B. How many of your cards went into the table?
About 6 or 7 at various points in the game.
And then at one point, you were keeping a secret list of the cards that had gone into the table and then playing them and just saying, trust me, guys.
A secret unverifiable list.
So Stockpile is a very simple game where there are 5 or 6 companies that all have a value of 5, I believe, at the start of the game. Everyone is given pieces of information, each round about what one company will do. So there's a public piece of information that says at the end of this turn, yellow's going up 1. And then everybody has a hidden piece of information. I may know that the red automobile company is going to go up 4. And Neelan may know that, hey, every share that you have of tech company is going to pay out money. And so everyone has to use that information to their advantage each turn. And how that works is that you are placing cards into hops, and then you are auctioning them off. So everyone will spend however much money they want to acquire a pile of cards. Some of those cards are face up, some of those cards are face down, so you don't really know what you're getting into, but you are watching other people bid and then outbidding them if you think they know something about a stock that may go from $5 to $9 all in one turn. And then you play cards. It's a very procedural game, and then everyone gets to sell stocks, and then all the stocks either go up or down in value. It sounds relatively straightforward, but where the interesting thing happens is that if a stock goes above 10, it splits. And so every share that you have becomes multiple shares of that stock. Similarly, if a stock becomes worth $0, everyone dumps all of their stock of that type. So there's this shared incentive to make certain companies go up. You never really want to be the only person invested in a company, because then nothing good is going to happen to it. There are also action cards that you can draft that allow you some control over what's happening to these companies. That's ultimately the game. It's very straightforward. You do that 6 times, then whoever has the most money wins. Our first game of it together went relatively well on the gameplay side of things. As it usually happens when it's a strong economic game, Mark wins. He's the best at tricking people or stealing their money, which he does in his professional life.
I just imagine you were all grandmas. You know, like they tell people to imagine, like when they're doing public speaking, that everybody's in their underwear.
Yeah.
So I combined the two. I imagined you all were in your underwear as grandmas. Wait, no, never mind.
Well,
Never mind. That's gonna get cut. That's gonna get cut.
Not getting cut. What are you talking about? I say stuff like that all the time, and then you amplify it and repeat it.
People expect more from me, though. People expect 2 things from me. People expect a high standard and not to say the catchphrase. That's the 2 things people expect from me.
You haven't been working out the big brain.
That's right.
That big muscle. Right. No, but I would actually want to ask you, Mark, is there moments in the game where you just go, wow, these idiots don't know how to value money? Because even halfway through the game, I'm just like, how does Mark already have $40? We're all around 20. How is this happening? It's not even halfway over.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, in the end, what? What'd you
say? This was like your headcanon. You're like, these idiots don't realize.
That is my headcanon for sure. But no, I didn't think that. It might be a function of me being so focused on my own game that I didn't really look around. But I didn't think that you guys were making any big misplays. And also, I was the only person who played the game before, so that was a big advantage. Speaking of having played this game before, the last couple times I've played it were with one of the expansions that come in the box, which are the investors, where you get player powers. You get you draw 2, select 1. I've always suspected that they were a little imbalanced. I'd be interested to hear from listeners whether or not they agree with that. I think I remember looking it up at some point in the past and seeing people have that same sort of consensus that the player powers were a little off. So this time we played without player powers, and I just thought the game was played in a more balanced fashion. The games I had of Stockpile in the past just seemed like the winner was dictated by whoever had the best power.
As someone that generally likes player powers, like this didn't feel like it was missing them. I don't know.
Yeah. I think you get that player power feel sort of in your hidden information every round.
Right, exactly.
That little bit of information you have is sort of like your player power in a way.
I was pleasantly surprised by Stockpile, even though I knew I would probably like it. I think you have to know that you are at the whims of the market, and there's some turns where it's just, LOL, isn't that funny? What just happened to me? And it can feel bad at the wrong moment. But as a base of an expandable system that has modular expansions both in the base box and as a result of expansions, I'm excited to try this out, to explore the system. It's so light, but it still gives you that stock manipulation thing. It feels like you have to go all the way to 18xx to really make those types of decisions usually interesting. And I thought that this still had some interesting decisions in a very light wrapper. And, if we were in episode 1 through 50, this is when Mark would make a Biblios joke. But everyone knows that Biblios has no manipulation of currencies in it.
It's not a joke. Biblios is not a joke. Don't use those 2 words in the same sentence. When it's Biblios, it's serious. That's my catchphrase.
You don't have a catchphrase.
I don't have your catchphrase.
No, people have to like you for you to have a catchphrase. And the second half of this discussion, which we alluded to when we opened this, is just, man, it took much longer in Tabletopia to play this game than it would have in real life.
Yeah.
Both from getting all of our computers to go, shuffling cards was abhorrent, and we ended up just sort of spreading them out on the table at various points rather than using the built-in shuffle functionality. And Stockpile isn't a game that has a ton of components. It's not like we're playing a Feast for Odin and moving 77 things around the board. I thought that this would be the perfect weight for us to get through a game relatively quickly.
I'm definitely surprised sometimes by how Tabletopia just sort of glitches out and makes some things harder than it needs to be. As someone that's used Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator both, I mean, Tabletop Simulator has its issues too, but I feel like it has a few more little quality of life things, like just grabbing a stack of cards and just sort of, putting them into a deck very easily, which was probably the majority of our time in Stockpile, was just getting all 6 cards into one deck.
Yeah.
Which is absurd.
Yeah, my first experience with Tabletopia was a game of Hansa Teutonica a couple of weeks ago, and they went relatively smoothly, so I was excited to play more on Tabletopia. But our last game of Hansa and this game of Stockpile certainly were clearly a lot slower than they would have been in person, so that sort of cooled my excitement on Tabletopia a little bit.
But we got to play together, and that's what matters most in this tough world.
Crazy world that we're in.
And that is Stockpile.
So it's been a little while, but we figured in celebration of being nominated for the best podcast of 2019, we would read a review, a little blast from the past. So Neelan, can you pull something up and
give
it a read?
I have something from Little Welsh Luke that's titled Headphone Barrage.
You going to do this in a Welsh accent?
No, I'm not going to do this in a Welsh accent. He says, really great podcast and an excellent addition to my rotation. Interesting, informative reviews with a different, honest take on well-known games and introductions to many unknown games. However, the beep noise used as a warning is identical to my headphone low battery sound. Every episode I now panic check my headphones. It adds a unique sense of tension uncaptured in all other podcasts. Great stuff.
Boom. See?
Wait, is that the cursing sound?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the end of podcast blooper reel beep.
Oh, maybe.
What was the guy's name?
Little Welsh Luke.
Welsh loop.
Your battery's dying.
Go check it.
Thank you, Little Welsh Luke, for that review. If you'd like to post a review, post it wherever you found this podcast, on Apple Podcasts or Facebook, wherever they'll let you review us. So now on to our main discussion, the top 5 games that we wish we could play, but the lockdown has prevented us. Only the concerted efforts of the world's governments can keep us from playing these games, right? Right?
Exactly. Liberate California.
I don't...
The thoughts and musings of Neelan do not represent those of the Board Game Broad podcast as a whole, especially me. Maybe Kellen, though.
Yeah, we could all go to RSA together, right? This would be the perfect time.
That's right.
Things are much better there, I promise.
When it came to considering games for this list, guys, did you keep it strictly to games that you could not access by one means or another during the quarantine? Are these games that you are incapable of playing during the quarantine, or what was the criteria for games to make it on this list for you?
I think that was at least a mild consideration on my end, just by virtue of the fact that, talking about something like Hansa Teutonica when we've actively been playing it felt a little bit weird. But I definitely have games on the list that I could be playing online, but I wouldn't want to ideally. It doesn't feel that enticing to be like, oh yeah, let's play this online when, we know that what is fun about them is the activity around the table.
Right.
I am quarantined with the blue tank, Christina. And so on one end of the spectrum is Innovation, which we get to play and have played in person and online, which we think is hilarious to be playing on 2 laptops, like sitting next to each other. And so on the other end of the spectrum is just, well, what institutions are not in place? We're not getting together for 4-player game nights. We're not going to our bigger game nights where we can play more party games and bigger group games. And so this list is the games that I'd really love to play right now if the world were normal.
Right.
And so I think some of them could be played on TTS or Tabletopia, but I'd just be so afraid that Neelan would get all the cards stuck in the table.
That's a valid concern. That's a very valid concern. Okay, so let's get right into it then. Neelan, what's your number 5 game?
My number 5 game is Awkward Guests. I got this one right before this all started going down, so I played one game of it, and that game was like enticing enough that I really, really wanted to play more of it, and then all of this happened, and it was just suddenly impossible. I did briefly look into the possibility of like whether it exists in Tabletop Simulator. I don't think that implementation is that good, and also it's just a game primarily about manipulating a lot of cards and making notes on your board. It's kind of a Clue-style deduction game. It seems like something that I would pretty ably describe as a reinvention of Clue. But yeah, I don't think that it would work as well online just because of how meticulous the note-taking aspect of it is. So it's something I want to play a lot more of, and I had that one brief taste of before the world went mad. That's Awkward Guests.
Kellen, what's your number 5 game?
So, as most things do on my list, it comes with a story.
Great.
What do you mean, great?
I said great.
That should be an enthusiastic great, right?
The enthusiasm is inherent in the word itself.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah. Do people like it when you talk to them like that? The number 5 game on my list, Asmodee, had a sale. They announced a sale in the middle of quarantine last week, and Nusfjord was in that sale. And I said, I really want to play Nusfjord again. But it was sold out by the time work ended for the day. So I kept hitting refresh. I hit refresh all night long. Okay? And when I woke up in the morning after hitting refresh all night long, it was available. So I quickly purchased it for a great price. I think it was under $40, which is great under Asmodee's new draconian pricing policies. Well, they closed their warehouse, I guess, the next day or something, because they sent an email saying, oh, by the way, all those orders are canceled. But it's like, gosh. And that's fine. I get it's for the safety of people, but they also had the sale. You know what I mean? This game wasn't like I just picked out a random game from their warehouse. They put it on sale and then canceled their sale. Nusfjord is a Uwe Rosenberg game. We have all played it together once before. Just a nice, tight worker placement game that we all liked more than we thought we would, I think, when we played it the first time. And I'd love to get it back to the table. I'm not in love with the theme of Fishing Village or whatever it is, and I wish it was just Farming Game, the farming game. It's better than Viking Game, the farming game. But
and yet you'll buy every Japanese fishing game that ever existed.
Oh,
Dice Fishing Roll and Catch is a 10 out of 10, Jim. So how dare you, sir? So that is my number 5, Nusfjord from Asmodee.
Folks who came to my virtual birthday party will have seen my number 5 because I
all two of you.
Now.
It was me and Neelan. What are you talking about? And we even got you a cake. We even got you a cake, Mark. Have you talked publicly about how beautiful your cake was?
I did. I sent a picture to Neelan.
Rich and buttery with a face like you didn't like it.
So the folks who were there, the hundreds of folks who were there, would have seen this game. This is a game I got for my birthday, and it is Flotilla. I've heard mixed things about it. I know the guys over at So Very Wrong were a little lukewarm on it, if not more than lukewarm on it. But I'm still interested to give it a spin. It's a game that takes place in sort of 2 halves, but the 2 halves don't happen necessarily for all players at the same time. There's some aspect of starting the game underwater, and then at some point you can elect to go on land, and there's some sort of incentive for being the first person to go on land, but you're giving up things by doing so. So the idea that it's this, for lack of a better term, asynchronous phase switching is interesting. And I know it shares a lot of the same mechanisms with Concordia, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a game that I enjoy quite a bit. So Flotilla is my number 5.
I really want to try this. The length is scaring me away a little bit.
Is it supposed to be quite long?
I've heard it just twists. For me, the 2-hour mark is kind of holy.
Yeah.
Especially because the 2-hour mark also comes with 30 minutes of teaching the game at least, usually. And so a 2-hour game takes probably 3 hours most of the time. And so that's just too much time for me.
Makes sense. So that is my number 5 game, Flotilla. Neelan, what's your number 4?
My number 4 game is Kemet. I've had Kemet for a very long time. Haven't played in a long time. Kellen is already rolling his eyes. We played this.
We just played it.
Well, but that was the thing. We played it right before this all went down at Dice Tower West. So we played this with Daniel. I sort of had oh my gosh, Kemet is so good. Like, re-realization.
It reignited the fire.
Exactly. It reignited the need to play Kemet.
Kellen, you need some fire in your life.
On top of that, I just got the expansion. I just got the expansion right before this all happened. I haven't had a chance to play it. And my friend group is like looking, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago or a week ago that we're looking for another game to sort of transition to from Scythe. And Kemet seemed like intriguing. We had played it once with them like a long time ago. And they kind of really, really like the idea of going back to that. So yeah, I've just been itching to get Kemet back to the table more. Especially now with Tassetti and like the black tiles, which I've not even played with yet, even the last time we played it. I'm super excited for this.
I think the biggest takeaway is that you talked about your friend group, and it wasn't us that you're referring to. So that's sort of interesting.
I have many, many friends, Mark.
Oh.
Many, many friend groups. That is Kemet.
Kellen, what's your number 4 game?
Well, Mark, at your birthday party, so this is the story once again, I can't just say the game.
Right.
At your birthday party, where we only had 2 attendees, me and Neelan, we played a Jackbox party game, social deduction, called Push the Button. And this was a bad social deduction game that was mildly fun by virtue of getting to draw pictures and then going, who drew the weirdest picture that doesn't fit in with the rest of the pictures? So it got me itching to play a social deduction game. And at the same time, I saw a tweet from my favorite board game publisher, Oink Games, about a new edition of Insider coming out. This is Insider Black Edition, I think is what they're calling it. It's unclear. It adds additional roles to Insider. So the saga continues.
That is hilarious.
Insider, for those who don't know, is a very similar game to Werewords, which is a game of 20 questions where one person knows what the word is and is either trying or not trying to get the people at the table to get to that word. So a lot of times you're looking around the table and going, why the hell hasn't Neelan asked a coherent question in 7 minutes? Like, what is Neelan doing? And it's usually that he's just confused, but you might think he's the hidden traitor. Depending on the version of the game, there are different motives and roles that you might play. Insider and Werewords have a little bit of a troubled history of which came first and who copied who, but Insider, this new version, adds additional roles, probably that are going to be fairly similar to roles that exist in Werewords, would be my guess. But the box is black, so I have to buy it.
Yeah, no, we don't usually do breaking news here because we want to keep things, timeless, but I'm just seeing this on Board Game Geek, where we were just nominated for Best Podcast of 2019, that Bezier Games is now filing suit against Oink for stealing their idea.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. But they could. Okay. That'd be funny.
That would be amazing. I would be so happy.
That would be hilarious.
To call lawyers and help Oink Games. I would kind of be their knight in shining armor. So that is a long-winded way of saying that I social deduction games are harder to play in the quarantine. Insider is one of my favorites that I would love to play and just goof off with, but this new version of it also looks pretty cool.
My number 4 game is, Kellen's been talking about how he enjoys games that cut off at 2 hours, which I agree with. I get 2 hours is a sweet spot. This game, I think, is going to go a little longer than 2 hours, although it's supposed to be short for its genre. This is 1889, a game we got a copy of from a listener that I've always wanted to play. It's supposed to be like a good introductory version of the 18XX series. And I know there are various 18XX implementations, but especially for our first all-together game of an 18XX game, I think definitely we want to do that in person. But I am just really itching to make our first combined BGB 18XX experience, 1889, which takes place where, Kellen?
Choo-choo.
What?
Like a train.
But where does it take place?
Nippon.
What?
Nippon.
Yeah, okay. All right. There you go.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, it appeals to you. It's your homeland.
You had it more at trains by the sound of it.
That's true. Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, that's my number 4, 1889.
I wanted to say choo-choo, but then I'd already used my for the episode.
Yeah, you have to be considerate of little Luke, little Welsh Luke.
Irish man.
Irish, don't do that. Don't do that.
What was it?
Welsh.
They love being
Welsh.
taken for the Irish.
Oh, I'm Welsh, actually. So I'll have you
How
know.
dare you?
Welsh and Danish.
Neelan, what is your number 3 game?
My number 3 game is Maracaibo. This was one of my most anticipated games from Essen last year, and when it sort of finally hit the US this year, I was super excited to play it. It is a spiritual successor, I guess some might say, to Great Western Trail, which is a game that since we played it, I've long since had this itch to like play more Great Western Trail. So when Maracaibo came along, I was like, well, this is perfect. If this is like a slightly bit different plus version of Great Western Trail, that seems ideal. A lot of people in our Discord were super positive on it, saying that it holds up quite well compared to Great Western Trail. That it's not necessarily like a one is better than the other. They do things quite differently. I picked this up right before the lockdown hit. So I've just been staring at the box with everything punched out, reading over the rules, and no one to play it with. It seems really cool from what I can tell. Like I'm excited. I have to play Maracaibo.
Kellen, what's your number 3?
My number 3 game that I really want to play is the anomaly on this list for me. This is the only one I have not played before, and that is Pipeline. I don't know why. I just have this feeling that the economics of it will get me going. The art and the theme both get me going for some reason. Pipeline is many people's game of 2019. I like the artwork in this game. I like the theme. I like economic games that come in packages that are less than 5 hours long. And so I think I will like Pipeline. I know there is some moving tiles around in it and spatial puzzle that I may not prefer, but I am excited to get to the table and do think it'll be one that I seek out very quickly after we are out of quarantine.
The last time I played Pipeline, I made a point of, and did quite well, sort of just only half paying attention to the spatial puzzle. Like you concentrate on a couple of pipes, and then I think that's good enough a lot of the time.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I'm quite keen to play this with you. I was actually surprised to see this wasn't nominated for Best Board Game on the Golden Geek Awards, but it's quite excellent. It's certainly my favorite game of last year, that's for sure.
You know, it's a good list when Wingspan has been nominated for Most Innovative Game of 2019. It's foolproof.
Well, if you want to play a good economic game, my number 3 is right up that alley. This is a game that I have played before. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Brass Birmingham. A lot of people in our friends group are actually playing this currently on Tabletopia or maybe it's Tabletop Simulator.
But not Neelan's friend group.
But not Neelan's friend group. Yeah, those are 2 separate friend groups, to be clear. It has quite a few components in it that when you play it on the table in real life, it doesn't come off as fiddly, but I for some reason, I feel like an online implementation would be fiddly. There'd be a lot of chits to put out and to flip and cubes. So that's just what has been having me sort of shy away from playing it online. But all the talk of people playing it in our friend group has made me want to play it, but just the real life cube cardboard version of Martin Wallace's classic Brass Birmingham. Neelan, what's your number 2?
My number 2 game was a game that Kellen was kind enough to offload to me, and then I sold for a profit. This is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. I didn't sell it for a profit, Kellen.
I see it behind you.
You're right there. I've been envisioning this as the game that my other friend group, when playing Gloomhaven with, once we finish up that campaign, that we would move on to Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. I've been quite stoked by this based on Mark's recommendation. It sounds like a perfect fit just for that sort of cooperative, but with a little bit of spice, a little bit of flavor, a little bit of potential shenanigans going on in every scenario. It seems really cool. I know that there is a tabletop simulator implementation, but I feel like so much about the game is the presence of the minis on the board and that sort of thing. So that just feels like a poor way to play the game when I literally already have a copy of it just waiting to be played. That is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition.
Let me ask you this, Neelan.
Yeah.
Does your friend group have professional actors in it?
No. Should they be?
Because I played this with the Orchid Tank, Paul Ademi, professional actor, and nothing could save it.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't think this could never reach the heights of that game, I'm sure, but we will try our best.
Many people love this. I just, I don't. It's a random LOL roll the dice fest for people who like Dungeons and Dragons.
Live a little, Colin.
That's all skill checks. What do you like?
Live
games
a little,
with skill
Colin.
checks? Don't say that to me. That's rude.
Chance. You need a little chance in your life. Not everything needs to be deterministic. I know how much you like numbers and spreadsheets and A plus B equals C. No, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Probably makes more sense.
I probably do spend more time in spreadsheets than you.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
He's got you there.
Emasculated. I feel emasculated. You've cut me to the core.
I have a spreadsheet that I won't reveal to you, but it's called Life FU. 2 words.
Right.
So my number 2 game comes with what? No, go back in the bedroom. Why?
Move over. Get up.
Uh-oh. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. All right.
This is what we
Hello,
need.
boys.
Hello.
How's it going?
We need to push, Christina. We need you in here to get us to the number 1 spot of the podcast of the year.
Oh yeah. Let's do it. What do I have to say?
You just have to just do your thing.
All right. So what are we talking about today? I wasn't given any. I got a list
Kellen.
from Neelan, but I don't understand what it was
the
for.
context?
So
Based on that list, what would you guess our top 5 is?
Oh, I didn't even read the list, to be honest. I don't read those. I just make sure there's no duplicates.
So our topic is games that you're itching to play that you can't really play under quarantine, basically.
Oh, you know what? I'll tell you what I'm itching to play that I can't play under quarantine. Every single game we've played on Tabletopia. No offense to Tabletopia, but I think Stockpile was a really cool game, and I wish we could play it in person because I was just so frustrated and annoyed the whole time because I kept making stupid computer mistakes. I don't know if everybody knows this, but I'm really bad at using the computer. I'm not a nerd like Kellen. So I have a hard time with like really simple controls. I'm inept when it comes to like video games and stuff. But anyways, so this carries over apparently to Tabletopia, where I just was having a horrible time trying to like place cards on top of other cards. Anyways, it made me really every single time we played a game on there, I'm like, well, I can't wait to play this in real life. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like, so that would be Stockpile. That would be Hansa Teutonica. Trois we did play in real life, but I want to play it again in real life. What else we played? Can't Stop. That's really fun. And we played that on Board Game Arena. That was cool because, they did all the math for you. So that makes it easier. But still, you don't have the dice rolling. And
Sure.
yeah, so that's my list. I didn't really prepare it, but there it is.
None of us has done 4 games at this point, so you already have exceeded us.
All right.
But as bad as you claim to be when it comes to computers, did you have your cards virtually get stuck in the
We
table?
don't have to revisit that. Like, she's already admitted
So
to being
as
the
bad as
worst
you
at
are.
Tabletopia.
I have never, ever gotten my cards stuck inside the table of Tabletopia. So yeah, I guess I am better than
Others.
Neelan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go back.
But what about what about when I stole Kellen's meeple and I took it into my hand? Wasn't that hilarious? That was the best part of Tabletopia. So if anybody's playing Stockpile on Tabletopia, you have the little meeples and they're super tiny and cute. And you can take up people's stuff. So I grabbed Kellen's and I was carrying it. I was like, where should I hide this? And then I pulled it to my hand. It gets lit up at the bottom. And put it there, and it got huge. And all of a sudden, I had this huge red meeple in my hand, and Kellen couldn't see it. I was dying of laughter. That was probably the best part of our game, in my opinion. This sounds pretty good. The sound quality's good here. It's very crystal clear. Cool.
Professional.
All right. Well, anything else that you want to hear from me?
No, I think I can envision our podcast of the year votes climbing as people are listening to this. So I think we're all good.
So what you're saying is you don't need Kellen back?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do not need him back. That's for
All
sure.
right, Kellen, you can go into the bedroom. I'll take
Yeah.
over from here. We're all good. We're set. So
That's right. Yeah, Christina's already
thanks for
done
your
4.
contribution so far.
Thanks for your service.
He's still standing there.
Just tell him we're done, and then maybe he'll walk away.
Yeah, maybe. He won't notice that I'm sitting at his desk talking into the red mic. All right. Well,
All right.
It was fun. Thanks
Yes.
for letting me interrupt, and I'll go back to my dance party because that's what you do in quarantine. Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right. Before I was so rudely interrupted, I was telling the story about my number 2 game. No, my number 2 game that I am eager to play again is Dune. Dune is a 6-player social experience long board game. I am sure there are mods of it on Tabletop Simulator, but the experience of being around a table with people and duking it out, fighting it out, cannot be replicated. I know that our original game of Dune went sideways. I'd love to try it with some of the new rules. I have the new edition. There is also the expansion for it that is coming out relatively soon that has the Tleilaxu and one of the other races from the Dune universe. And I think that comes out, I think it's a little bit on COVID hold right now, but the idea that they've expanded this old game with new factions is pretty interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that happens.
I didn't know you had the new edition. That's pretty cool.
I mean, we're not going to use it because it's smaller than the print and play that's prettier, but I just needed it. So hard to say why.
My number 2 game is a game that I, for whatever reason, often get mixed up with Maracaibo. I think they got released at the same time. They have a similar color palette. This is Capstone's game Cooper Island, and I mentioned Capstone because one of the main reasons I'm interested to play Cooper Island is it is a Capstone game, and they are batting near 1,000 for me at the moment. This is, as most of Capstone's games are, medium to heavy game. I don't really know too much about it. I acquired it in a trade at Dice Tower West before things went down. So I haven't had a chance to crack it open and read the rules too much in depth. But the reviews have been pretty good. And Capstone, again, all their games are usually hits for me. So I'm excited to give Cooper Island a spin.
That's another one actually that every time I see a picture of by the same thing you're saying, like it just looks very intriguing and very cool, and I would love to try that too. Yeah,
it's by I know he goes by Ode. I forget his real name, but he's well known in the 18xx community as a guy who does a lot of 18xx games. So it's good, definitely have a heavy economic tinge to it, probably. So yeah, that is Cooper Island, my number 2 game. Nealon, what's your number 1 game?
My number 1 game is a game that I backed on Kickstarter 18 months ago, July 2018. It arrived like 4 weeks ago. This is Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy. And I was so jazzed to play this with the 3 of you. I think this would have been
this one you want to play with the 3 of us.
Yeah, this one specifically.
What happened to your
I was
group?
primed for this friend group, I thought. It's a more Euro take on something like Twilight Imperium. It's a 4X game, but a game that is going to, it's going to take a bunch of time. You're building up a bunch of ships. You're sort of moving them around and sending your fleets against enemy players. I just think it would have been so good for us. And I think for someone like Helen, who's played Twilight Imperium and was sort of like less than enamored by it, I have this idea that Eclipse might just be the refinement that he wants on it. I have this worry that it's perhaps too much in the Euro direction. I'm not sure about that, but I love the first edition of Eclipse. And when I got the box for Second Dawn and it's all the new miniatures and all the production values on it are really, really good. And I can't play it. It's there and it's been so long and I've been waiting to play it and I can't. And it's awful. That is Eclipse.
I'm curious if we'll see a resurgence for this one because a couple of years ago, this was the talk of the town, man. I feel like you couldn't hear, everyone was talking about Eclipse, and I feel like we're back to just hearing about Twilight Imperium all the time.
Yeah, and I wonder so much of how much, just literally the timing of this, like there's a bunch of people sitting with these new boxes of Eclipse that can't play them, and I feel like it's been out of the buzz for what was a really, really big Kickstarter, probably for that exact reason. Yeah, that's Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy.
All right, Kellen.
The game that I am most excited about playing once we get out of quarantine is a Japanese auction game called
Surprise.
Square on Sale. So one of the last games that we got to play together was Square on Sale. This is a very, very unique auction game that with a cloth board with beautiful components. We had a really interesting first game. I really liked it on first blush. I'm so eager to play it again that I have been looking into maybe how to make my own Tabletop Simulator mod to inject this into Tabletop Simulator. I'm always on the lookout for the 45-minute to 1 hour games that punch above their weight. I think this does that. I think it does it with chaos and fun. It's very interesting and beautiful if you want to look it up. That is Square on Sale, my number 1.
My number 1 game is also a game that we've all played together shortly before the quarantine. And this is one of the hot games that sort of seems to be the talk of the town. This is The Crew. And maybe this is a function of hearing a lot of reviewers talk about it. I know there's an online implementation, but I am itching to get around the table and play a couple hands of The Crew. It just feels like I find myself right now wanting to play sort of lighter games. I don't know if it's just the psychology of the quarantine or something. I don't really feel, despite some of the games on my list being heavier games, but when it comes to a game that I want to play right now, like just generic game, I just feel like I want it to be sort of on the lighter side. And so there have been a number of times I found myself just wishing we could get around the table and play, 4 or 5 hands of the Crew, a very light rule set, a game that we could, if we were doing well, we could play 10 games of in 30 minutes or something. It just, that sort of lightness, that sort of trying to get around the communication restrictions. It just feels like a game that hits a lot of different sweet spots for me right now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out of this and playing some Crew.
I saw the Crew on some of the Board Game Geek 2019 top categories, and it's like, yeah, it came out in 2019, but no one had it until this year.
Yeah. The timing of those award things are odd, but yeah. So that's my number one game, and that's all our top 5 games that we wish we could play, but for one reason or another, don't feel like or can't play during this age of quarantine. If you've got games that you are looking forward to playing once all this is done, go ahead and jump on the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, or for a more long form discussion, you could chat with us on the Guild at boardgamebarrage.com/Guild and let us know the games that you can't wait to get back to the table, to a real table. So that's going to do it for our list of top 5 games, and that's going to do it for the show. But before we go, let me cast you back to August 13th, 1919. You remember that day, Kellen?
1919?
Yeah.
No.
We were in Saratoga Springs for the Saratoga race. We were all watching a Man of War who had been undefeated, one of the greatest horses of all time.
Why are you doing this?
He was big time favorite. He had not lost the race. So this is the Sanford Memorial Stakes, and Man of War is a big favorite, but he's beat by none other than Upset. The name of the horse who gave Man of War his only defeat was named Upset, and that is where we get the term upset. It's actually not where we get the term upset, but that's what a lot of people think. But it's a cool story. And so I envision, instead of horses, I envision the tanks
Upsetting some elephants
and some pegs and some people who are wrong about games.
Brains.
Yeah. So think back to history and go ahead and vote for us at boardgamebarrage.com/vote. And let's see if we can't pull an upset of our own. In the meantime, if you want to find us, you can find us on all forms of social networking. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're everywhere you want to find us. You can join our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord or the Guild at boardgamebarrage.com/Guild. And you can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Otherwise, thank you as always to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And that's going to do it. Vote at boardgamebarrage.com/vote. Let's make it happen. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Mark, why don't you just one more time ask me how my thumb's doing like a friend would do?
Okay.
So they know we like each other.
Kellen, how's your thumb doing?
It feels bad, but I'll get through it.
When it's Biblios, it's serious.
What?
That's the catchphrase. Haven't you been paying attention?
Stop it. Turn it off. Shut it off. So we've been lying to you guys for a long time.
That's right.
And we're ready to come clean. And that secret is that Neelan, Mark, and I have never met in real life before. This is all being done remotely. Even though we all live in Los Angeles, we have no interest in meeting each other in the physical form.
Zero. I can vouch for that.
I'm actually a very sophisticated speech bot.
So we just recently added video when we record with each other just to see our reactions. So that's been an upgrade.
This is the first time I've seen Kellen's face.
This whole time I thought Neelan was a white guy.
Oh, no. I'm not getting anywhere near this joke.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Neelan. Read a review.
Sure.
Speak to us, Neelan, in your beautiful voice. You almost laughed.
Almost. Should I
what is
do
the
it?
abbreviation for South Africa? It's like RSD or something?
ZA, usually.
ZA.
Zuid-Afrika. It's Dutch for Zuid-Afrika.
You know that they call it Survivor, and then an apostrophe or in commas, no, parentheses, they Survivor parentheses ZA. Then in other cooler places like Australia, they just call it Australian Survivor. That's not a joke.
I've
That's not even a joke.
Why don't I have my thing? Oh, that's in mine.
I definitely have seen South Africa's RSA. No.
RSA was the old abbreviation for South Africa. So I guess it depends. So it's technically the Republic of South Africa, but I think RSA has kind of fallen out of vogue a lot. It's been a long time since I've seen it ever referred to as RSA. I feel like actually it's because when I remember this coming up, just as a complete aside, when the internet was becoming popular, like .co.za was our domain. And everyone was like, what the hell is ZA? And people were like, oh, that's actually the official country code for South Africa, apparently. And no one really knew that beforehand. And I think they just sort of started replacing RSA. I don't know if anyone really calls it the Republic of South Africa anymore. I think it's still technically.
And that is your South Africa tip.
My South Africa segment, yeah.
Interstitial story time. None of you have asked me why I have a Band-Aid on my thumb yet.
I assume
Mark?
you just messed up doing something and just hurt yourself.
Mark, would you be so kind to be a friend and ask me what happened?
Hey, Kellen. Can't help but notice.
But you'll start it
on your thumb.
You'll start it there, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So,
I'm not finished. Do you mind telling me the story of why you have a Band-Aid on your thumb?
absolutely,
My friend?
I would love to, friend.
My dear.
So, I was completing a job, and I'm starting a new job next week remotely, which is kind of a surreal thing, right? Sort of have to ship back your laptop. So they sent me an impenetrable FedEx box with which to send my laptop back to them. Okay. So I was using a steak knife to try to open the box to ship back my laptop. And I already had my new laptop from the new company that I'm starting at on Monday. And I cut into my thumb pretty deeply trying to get into the box, which I think means I get workman's comp, right? And I was sort of sitting there thinking, like, if I died from this, like, that would be
ironic.
Bad way to go.
Yeah, but it's sort of like it's my last day, so I don't know how I'm going to pump them for money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
But we do have some lawyer friends, so I have reached out.
Were you tempted to swapsy the new laptop that you got from the new company and return it to the old company?
No, but I was thinking about putting some blood in the packing peanut on my thumb.
There you go.
Just to say goodbye one last time.